When President Trump imposed tariffs of 145% on Chinese goods, the consequences were immediate. U.S. importers began canceling orders, prompting numerous Chinese factories to suspend production. In one instance, a shoe factory in China experienced inventory piling up nearly to the ceiling. However, only a few weeks later, the Trump administration agreed to pause most of the tariffs for a 90-day period. This temporary relief was welcomed by both American consumers and Chinese producers. During this 90-day window, the tariffs were not eliminated, but reduced to 30%. Although significantly lower than 145%, a 30% tariff still remains steep by international standards. The change has had major implications for China's export sector, which sends nearly $500 billion in goods to the United States annually. Meanwhile, China's trade concerns extend beyond America. Many developing nations have voiced growing concern over China's industrial overcapacity, which creates unfair competition for local industries. As a result, countries like Indonesia and Vietnam have banned the Chinese e-commerce platform Temu. The European Union is also considering raising its tariffs, fearing that increased U.S. duties may push Chinese exporters to flood other markets with low-priced goods. These developments come at a difficult time for China. While official statistics suggest an annual growth rate of 5%, underlying economic issues are emerging. Among the most alarming is youth unemployment, which now stands at 17%. The trade conflict has exposed structural weaknesses in China's export-driven economic model. The global shift toward protectionism is expected to reshape the international economy and stock markets, with significant implications for publicly traded companies, some of which will benefit while others may struggle. Back in 2018, during his first term, President Trump introduced initial tariffs targeting selected product categories such as solar panels, washing machines, steel, and aluminum, with rates ranging from 15% to 25%. These tariffs largely remain in effect. In late 2024, the Biden administration imposed a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles, effectively preventing their entry into the U.S. market. Currently, a 30% tariff applies to most Chinese imports, though smartphones and computers are partially exempt, facing only a 20% tariff. Another significant policy shift was the elimination of the de minimis exemption. Previously, packages valued under $800 were exempt from tariffs. Chinese e-commerce companies like Shein and Temu greatly benefited from this loophole. The exemption has now been removed, and these small packages are subject to a 54% tariff, though a flat $100 fee option can lower the effective rate to 12.5% for packages priced just under $800. These changes are expected to severely impact both Shein and Temu. In 2024, China exported approximately $440 billion worth of goods to the United States. This number is expected to decline. However, China's dependence on the U.S. has already been decreasing. Before 2018, North America accounted for over 18% of China's exports. By 2023, that figure had dropped to 14%. Part of this trend can be attributed to the 2018 tariffs, but another reason is increased demand from other countries. In 2016, most of China's exports were directed toward North America, East Asia, and Western Europe, regions with high consumer purchasing power. These three areas made up 56% of China's total exports. By 2023, their share had fallen to 46%, while developing regions have become more prominent. Southeast Asia increased its share of China's exports from 11% to 14%, South and Central America from 5% to 7%, and the Middle East, Central Asia, and Eastern Europe from 9% to 13%. These regions, rich in natural resources like oil and gas, import large volumes of Chinese consumer goods, creating a mutually beneficial trade relationship. South America and Southeast Asia, although relatively poorer, are experiencing economic growth. As incomes rise, demand for Chinese goods increases. Chinese automobile exports, especially electric vehicles, have seen rapid growth. In 2016, China's car imports and exports were roughly equal. By 2023, net vehicle exports had reached $160 billion, primarily to emerging markets. China exports no EVs to the U.S. and only a small amount to the EU due to trade barriers, but it has gained significant market share in Russia following the exit of Western car brands. Interestingly, China maintains a growing trade surplus with Southeast Asia, despite higher wages. In 2016, the surplus stood at $80 billion. By 2023, it had more than doubled to $164 billion. Both China and Southeast Asia are key textile producers, but China's advantage lies in automation. Highly automated dark factories require fewer workers and lower lighting costs, enabling China to remain competitive despite higher labor expenses. This technological edge allows Chinese exporters to outperform Southeast Asian rivals who struggle to compete. In response, Indonesia and Vietnam have taken measures such as banning Temu to protect domestic industries. Despite rapid development, China remains heavily reliant on exports. Its trade surplus with the rest of the world rose from $625 billion in 2016 to nearly $1 trillion in 2023. Many countries, from the U.S. to Southeast Asia, are increasingly reluctant to absorb China's excess industrial output. Ironically, one of the world's largest consumer markets, China's own population of 1.4 billion, remains underutilized. Final consumption represents just 55% of China's GDP, far lower than the U.S. at over 80%, Germany at 75%, and India at 70%. This low domestic consumption is partly due to high personal savings rates driven by the lack of a strong social safety net. Chinese citizens often save extensively to cover emergencies or purchase property, usually without relying on mortgages. Moreover, a significant portion of GDP is generated by state-owned enterprises, which reinvest profits into national infrastructure and industrial projects rather than returning them to consumers. For example, the Bank of China, mostly state-owned, typically returns about 30% of its profits to shareholders, compared to 50 to 60% for American banks like JP Morgan. These reinvestments expand China's production capacity, but limit income available for household consumption. As a result, China produces more than its citizens can consume, reinforcing export dependency. The push toward automation has further reduced labor demand, worsening youth unemployment. Many young Chinese graduates, unable to find jobs, return to school, or even pay to use fake office spaces to maintain the illusion of employment on social media. In the United States, 80% of jobs are in the service sector, which relies heavily on domestic demand. In China, service jobs represent only 46% of employment, a low figure for a country at its level of development. The global backlash against China's industrial overcapacity highlights the urgency for reform. Increasing domestic consumption would stimulate service sector employment and reduce reliance on exports. The Chinese government acknowledges this and has launched initiatives to boost consumption. Some proposals, like raising the minimum wage and expanding personal loans, appear sensible. Others are more questionable. The government has announced plans to promote emerging technologies such as autonomous vehicles, smart wearables, brain-computer interfaces, and 3D printing, as well as develop winter tourism in snowy regions. While innovation is important, redirecting funds to high-tech industries may reduce short-term consumer spending. Ultimately, sustainable growth must prioritize improving living standards. If industrial output continues to grow while domestic consumption lags, China's economic model will remain unbalanced. Long-term prosperity will require policy adjustments that empower consumers and encourage a more service-oriented, consumption-driven economy. Thanks for watching InvestingFlix. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and drop a comment below. For more expert insights on personal finance, investing, and wealth building, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out.